All right, well, while they're loading, you may recall if you were here at the last forum, I referred to our team as the Four Musketeers, with D'Artagnan being in absentee at that meeting. We now are the Three Amigos back here again, so George is back with us. I thought maybe black sombreros and singing bushes and visible swordsmen would be fun, but nevertheless, you just have us. So we're going to walk through the goals of what we've been working through. I'm going to do a little recap for you if you have not been part of these forums all along, and even if you have, just to bring you back into the core of the work that we're doing. Cisco is here from the FDA perspective to just recap on some of the FDA incentives. You've heard a lot about these already today, so hopefully this will be repeat information for you. And George is going to walk through some of the feedback that we heard during the brainstorm sessions of the last forum that was just down the way in DC, and where we've taken that feedback so far and some of the progress that we've made. So just to recap on our goal here, this maturity model concept is about measuring the capability of an organization to deliver quality products. This is not, as Cisco repeated earlier today, an audit done by FDA. This is a completely independent, innovative, and in-depth, there's 3 eyes for you, assessment that this tool will deliver for you. Not only delivering on the 4 or 5 little captions that you see down there in the middle, but also on some of those FDA incentives that Cisco will walk you through, the 30-day submission, lifting up on some of those, and the surveillance requirements as well. These are some of the companies that use that CMMI model. So if you haven't heard of that and thought it was a Medicare acronym, it's not, in fact, and it's used across broadly by industries, not just medical device. There are medical device companies that use it, but others as well. And so this is a tried and true model that we've selected for use here. No new information here if you've heard this speech before. We have quite a diverse team here, and in fact, the last 5 teams on the right-hand side, starting from Spectranetics down forward, are new members for us as well that have joined our team since the last forum. So we have an ever-growing family, which we love and appreciate. So lots of new members coming, and you can see the diversity in perspectives here, as well as the variety of small and large companies, companies that make very high-risk devices, companies that make lower-risk devices. We've got consultants who are eventually going to use this model, we hope, and help industry along. So we've got a lot of different perspective and participants as we go forward and build this model. So just to recap, it's been a long road. I was here last year about this time, and it felt like I was in front of a new product development committee just trying to sell the invention that we were working on. And now I feel like we've sold it and it's flying off the shelf, and we haven't really built up an inventory yet. So it's very exciting. I think things have really caught attention, and you know, we're very excited to continue our build and make this available for all of you. So last summer, we did a proof of concept where we actually tried and used this model out, made sure that it worked, not just for our work team, but it was going to work for industry, it was going to work for FDA, and to a question that came up earlier this morning, it was going to work for CMMI. I mentioned that this model was not intended for medical device only, so we needed to make sure that it was going to work, and there were some things that we could tweak along the way to make sure that we could modify it and that it would work for all purposes. We tried those pilots out, not to be confused with the pilot that Robin mentioned, which is 2018, which is pilot of the whole program. This was just pilot of pieces and parts of the maturity model with some companies to make sure that it was going to work. Down on the bottom of this slide in that blue text was a survey that was issued of those companies to make sure that it was going to be valuable for them. We heard a value beyond just the quality and regulatory folks that were involved in the audit. I know Al spoke to that earlier today, that there's just a huge amount of information that was valuable that they're still working through and is still being refreshed as they're moving forward. And also a closed FDA panel conversation just to really dive in and say, is this the right way forward? Is this what we're going to do? Is everybody on board? And the answer to all those questions was yes. So we went back in fury, and we're building from here. And Cisco will walk you through some of the incentives that FDA is working on.
Thank you, Jody. And I think you saw some of this earlier, right, where we're going and what we're trying to do. So just, again, and a lot of these slides are going to be made public since this is a public forum, so we want to recap. You want to communicate over and over again where we are and what we're trying to do. But, from an inspection standpoint and what we can do and what we can adjust, that's been done. Our internal teams have worked and established that pieces. How we're going to manage through some of the engagement and the efforts when things are going in one direction or another. We've set the expectation. We've got the teams kind of starting to develop what is that safe space that we're going to really work through. The submissions, again, we started some internal teams, some cross-center teams to really figure out how do we make the modifications that we need, especially within the scope of the regulations that we have now, because we're not changing regs yet. We want to learn, see what's going on, what is something that is the right thing to change if we do need to change one down the road, or is it enough to just consider a different interpretation or a different set of demonstrations for meeting the requirements of the regulations. So that's, again, done, moving on its way, and now we're just developing the structure for making sure we can keep that flow moving throughout the pilot, and we're assessing the right things. But to hit it again, the expanded efforts, right? This is all stuff that I just can't communicate enough how good it is to see across the teams when it's now the other pieces of the center, other pieces of the organizations who are saying, hey, well, that's not all we can do. We can also do this. And not only that, but then taking the lead on how that gets completed and accomplished. So, I mean, in particular, we've got a lot of engagement from our Office of In Vitro Diagnostics and Radiological Health there on the 510K modification piece. That's huge. That's something that we as an Office of Compliance now have a better set of expertise figuring out how do we get that dynamic going and how do we engage then that industry and make sure we're hitting the right points. So it's taking hold even internally. So I think that's something to really take away from this. You've heard about the benefits. Quick assessment, everybody heard some of the numbers ahead of time here, but in the 30-day notice space, from an FDA standpoint, that's big FTE numbers that we can actually use and redeploy to considering other ways that we can engage, other ways that we can do this smarter. And I think it goes back to the concept that Robin pitched. How do we get smarter about our regulations? How do we develop that paradigm? And again, from a patient standpoint, we've heard it. We'd love to be able to get more engagement on as to what their needs are in terms of that visibility, that transparency that we heard a little bit earlier, and I think that's something that now that we've got some space, some breathing room, right? We build capacity through all this. We can start really exploring. How do we then now satisfy that need? So that's going on there. Just some quick activities. You've heard the updates today where we are. We're working on developing our internal routing. We're working with the communications and governance team because that feedback framework, how we're going to really talk to each other, all the players in the room, learn, adapt, feedback to the CMMI team as we're going through this process, get feedback from the manufacturers as to how it's working. That's got to be really well developed. Everything else, I think we can say, hey, we can tolerate some space in how this thing is going to be operated, but that's key, as are the rules of engagement. Right? We want to make sure that everybody understands we're not looking to penalize people. This is not what this is for. We're not looking to enforce. We're looking to really move past that and really drive that joint collaboration and value for the patient. That concept, that model, it works in every other industry. Aerospace, whether it's telecom, whether it is the semiconductor, which is where my background comes from, it's the automotive space. How do you work with that group who's providing the supply? That collaboration drives better product and better value. We're working on the 510K modifications, so I think we've already kicked off, thanks to Stephanie, some early discussions with some of the manufacturers. We've got our team internally who's starting to work on that. Once they start, really driving and putting some things together, then we want to get the two teams together to have that broader discussion. And then our field, right? ORA has made a dramatic change. They're still kind of reeling from that, but they are a key partner in all this, and we want to make sure that they're engaged, they know where we're going. How do we communicate that through that activity, and that's part of our next 2 quarters coming forward. And in our implementation plan and our public meeting that, you know, I think is going to be announced fairly soon, so we have some good news around that. These are just some of the notes and slides that we took from the last open forum. We had this more open engagement communication. We did some brainstorming as to what questions might be out there. I'm not going to go through answering all of them, but what we're looking to do as part of the effort that the teams are working on, and we've got a team dedicated to the communications tackling all of these questions, and you'll be able to see that on the MDIC website as they start building out the responses that we've built. But we did listen, and we are trying to tackle as much of them as possible. We've got an answer, we'll give you an answer. When we don't know, we'll just say, hey, we don't know, but we've got some work to do in this area. We understand that this is either a need or a risk. Same thing, some more input from the forum. And now I think I'm going to turn it over to George for some further updates.
Thank you, Cisco. Yeah, so I'll bring us home. I know we're a little bit over time and moving forward here. So I only have a few slides, but first to underscore the amount of effort that this maturity model team has really invested over the last 2 years, if you will, but certainly over the last couple of months especially, you know, that investment to kind of bring us to where we are now. So, you know, communicating on behalf of our project leadership here that we're on track, and this is on track to be available you know, the beginning of 2018. So that's a big statement for us to make. I mean, you know, maybe a year ago, folks were like, well, maybe not. We're going through pilots, and we learned a lot in terms of, you know, you put a whole bunch of quality people in the room, what are you going to get? Everybody's trying to be perfect. And so you can't be perfect in this and be able to make progress. So I think that was a real aha moment for our team. We took a breather, took a step back and said, okay, how can we do this and really move it forward and do it in a practical way? As Cisco mentioned, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but can we, you know, continue to tweak and continue to optimize it? And we had commitment from the FDA right from the start and continuously to make sure that we can continue to work on that. So a couple of big statements to everybody. One, we're on track, we're on time. We are going to deliver this program. It will be available beginning of 2018 and meet, again, the strategic priorities, one of the strategic priorities that FDA has. So that's a big statement for us, and on behalf of the team and all the hard work that the team has done, I wanted to certainly share that with all of you. As Cisco said, from the March meeting, we went over, took that input. It was then put into each of the teams. We've got, similar to the analytics team, we had to put a governance structure in place and kind of have a diversified team across a number of different dimensions to make sure we could do this heavy lift. So you see across the top our enrollment team, appraisal team, metrics and communication and program integration, and the team leads respectively for each of the sub-teams that are meeting on a very regular basis, and then of course all the team members that are investing countless hours in moving that forward. So below that, I'm not going to read this slide, you'll have it available, but you can see the areas that we've been able to address in terms of looking at, you know, first in the enrollment side, what are the qualification and requirements for companies to sign up. And then also the enrollment form has been drafted. There's also an opportunity you'll see later on. We have a link for people we'd like to sign up early and be able to get this thing off the ground, so you'll see that. The appraisal team and working on the appraisal playbook. So this is really the CMMI work. So this is taking what CMMI has and then being able to adjust the requirements and characteristics that are there that align more to the medical device side. So again, that's a real big lift on that side. And also the conversations go around the qualifications of the appraisals themselves, the people that are going to be doing the appraisals, questions that need to be there, and then a robust discussion around the sharing of results. And we heard that a little bit earlier before. How does this, when this is communicated out, what is that? And Cisco, I think it was even in yours that kind of said, I don't care about all this other stuff, but then here are the scoring results at the end. That's really important for FDA. Well, from an industry perspective, how is that important to all of us? And how can we as an industry continue to improve? So maybe just again quickly to kind of give you a forward thinking, what if we go over and all of a sudden in an aggregate of our industry see that we are more mature in one area than another? And then we as an industry decide, well, you know what, there's still an opportunity for us to move forward more in the design design control or design area. In aggregate, we might be able to see the industry being able to see those areas where we can continue to improve in aggregate, not by specific companies. So again, that's the power of this type of data when we collect it and make sure we're sharing it in a transparent but also responsible way. So those are the robust discussions that are going on right now with that team. On the metrics side, you know, a lot of work being done on the metrics side from two vantage points. One is when you think about the cost of quality and the metrics that could be associated with high quality manufacturing. So that's one set. And then the second set that's also being discussed is what does good look like with respect to your maturity model with respect to metrics. So it's kind of looking at the the voluntary program and the metrics associated from a holistic program perspective. So that's kind of where it says specific engineering and quality metrics. That's kind of the future implementation. It's just kind of looking at that and saying, is it enough to just have see by buy and have your maturity model scores, or can we also put some metrics on the program itself and what we're looking at? So that's what's currently being discussed within the team. And then certainly a lot of work being done on the communication side, as Cisco was saying, a very robust FAQ is being drafted. We've reviewed a couple of drafts already of it, and again, it's very detailed. Lots of questions. The more questions we can get, the more we're putting in there and trying to answer to the best of our ability. And also arm all of you with the ability to communicate the value prop within your respective organizations to the executive level. So how do you sell this to your C-suite, as well as then from a cultural perspective, how do you sell this within your organization? It's really easy to get a whole bunch of quality people together. We get it. So it's easy to go over and talk amongst ourselves. But then when we try to communicate the value outside of our own circle, that's where we know we needed some help, and that's what that team is being chartered with and doing a phenomenal job. So it's really the ROI, what's the benefit of going into the voluntary program, what's the potential return on investment, and very transparent, what's it cost? What's it going to take for you to join? Even if it's a voluntary program, obviously there's a lot of preparatory work that has to go in, there's a lot of investment the organizations have to do to prepare as well as subject themselves to the appraisals themselves. So that type of information is being collected. There's some benchmarking associated with that. Again, that's more outside of medical device, but again, just the appraisals themselves to give you, arm you with as much information as possible to communicate that and say, well, what's this going to cost us internally? What's it going to take for us to take this program on? So again, that team is doing a great job and armed with that. Pending resolution, things that we're still working on here. Certainly we're trying to get through the remaining execution activities of the enrollment and the overall life cycle. When you join, what's that life cycle look like? When do I get appraised? When's the next appraisal after that? How does that look? And which gets into the next part there. And then how do we resolve appraisal issues? So if you feel that the results are not reflective of what the, within your organization, what's the resolution process for that? So this, and again, some of the other discussions that are going on now. Metrics on the same time on the metric side, that continues to evolve, and how that information can be collected, aggregated, and reported. And then also specifically on the communication side, more information around the marketing education aspects of that. So what do we need to do short, medium, long term? Can't do it all in the short term, but how can we continue to build on that message and continue to get the message out there to everyone? Moving forward, next steps, and Cisco had this a little bit on his slide. There is another public forum meeting in November, so we'll have another report out on the public side and be able to say, okay, all systems go, and some more information to share with everybody. And certainly FDA needs to be able to do some work as well in communicating formally through Federal Register as well. And then how do I enroll my organization? So here is a link for you to use and be able to start signing up. And certainly if you are interested in signing up, make sure that you see one of us from the maturity model team, certainly enroll. And if you have any questions, again, we're always available to answer those for everyone. So with that, I think, Stephanie, I know maybe we have the time for one or two questions.
Come on, they want a really hard question.
Heat index, I heard, is 105 degrees out there.
Hands going.
How will this link to the outcome analytics work? Got to ask you since you didn't ask me.
Great. I'll start and do that. So the linkage, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Ann, is because the linkage is really, really important. And really what it goes is the fact that the maturity of the organization, how that translates to manifesting the 7 dimensions that were illustrated during the last update. It's how those are going to tie together. I think the big benefit is the fact that we're not talking compliance. So everything, I think, aligns very, very tightly, hand in glove across the 7 dimensions that are there, and then how that's reflective both process and systematically from the maturity model, in addition to just how we're communicating the outcome that'll happen from those. And I think, again, some of those metrics we talked about as well, I think there could be a closer tie in some of the outputs and the aggregate metrics that we're talking about that I think also would be a benefit.
You want to go together?
So I'm going to actually copy, because Ann answered that question. Now, she asked it, but she had answered it beforehand. Right now, we're looking to see what we can enable, right? What is it that we can get out? What is the information that is of value, right? When we talk about what is the stuff that we should be focusing on and how do we get to the leading practices, right, the leading indicators, leading behaviors that will result in that better product outcome. So ideally, what we're looking to do is go back and then leverage that work that the analytics team is doing, what they're developing, how they're getting that data. Right now, I know they're not looking at the manufacturer data, but there may be a potential room down the road to even incorporate that, but at the very least, there's the that perspective that's being brought in. But the main connection that I see right now is we've got to measure for some leading indicators. We've got a way to do it. We're missing that closed loop on the other end, right? What is it that is being shown as a needle move? So that's, to me, the biggest connection that we've got. There's some work that needs to be done, I think, on both sides to make sure we can drive that connection right to the product. But that's to me, where everything kind of starts to come together and how they tie. We've got a focus here on that capability, building the stuff up front, being a little bit proactive on the right practices, and then you've got the analytics and the outcome work and that dashboard that's being developed that should say, here's how it's really impacting. So if we shift and drift one way or the other, we can actually have a more real-time view of that.
That a slightly different way and just say one of the aspects of the CMMI model, and you guys can chime in here as well, is to really understand who your customers are and what their requirements are generically, whether this is automotive or nuclear or whatever it is, and carry those through and deliver upon them. And I think what we'll see as we go through this pilot program are varying degrees of a company's ability to really truly know what those are. I think those of us who are in industry, sometimes we think we know what the customer wants, and you don't really ask the customer very many questions. So I think it's going to shed a lot of light on, both ways, on us exploring that and you exploring that. But I don't think there's any reason for you to hold back on what you're doing and wait for us at all. I think we're going to, as your diagram had it, we're going to learn from each other. Anything